Dead Bart, Redux by Dead Palette.
You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is an unaired episode from Season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who worked on the show at the time likes to talk about it. If you know about Dave Chappelle leaving Comedy Central and not wanting to talk about it, this is a similar situation, although less well known. From what little is known, this episode was written entirely by Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. During production of the first season, stress and opportunity were in the air. The Simpsons are now basically a cultural institution, even if most fans aren't thrilled with the later seasons. So bear in mind, Mr. Groening couldn't have known what impact he'd make. He was very concerned that viewers of Fox wouldn't understand his vision. If you watch the documentary, My Life Wasted, about Matt Groening, you'll see his vision for The Simpsons was to take the bland aspects of sitcoms he grew up with, like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, and inject some realism into them. He talks about bridging the gap between the zombified TV world, as he describes it, with what he knows to be real life. Matt describes watching TV as research. The point of this little documentary is to say that no time was wasted. The impetus for Bart Simpson was, what if Eddie Haskell, the bratty kid from Leave It to Beaver, was the focus of the show? What kind of trouble and conflict would arise from having a real menace, not a placid one, be the reason for a conflict in the story? According to one of the few comments on the subject by James L. Brooks, executive producer of The Simpsons, this scrapped episode was almost completed, but went unreleased because it didn't jive with what Fox wanted out of The Simpsons. Not only that, much of the staff felt the same way. It took a pre-screening with a focus group for Groening to realize it was best left on the cutting room floor. But during production, Groening insisted on going full steam ahead with the episode, explaining it'd be excellent once finished. The episode's production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labeled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart's production code. This would have been enough to erase Dead Bart from existence, if murmurs didn't start after the pre-screening. Said murmurs didn't describe much, only to say that the episode revolved around Bart dying after being jettisoned from an airplane window, and that it depicted a family in mourning. Now, rumors are just rumors, but reactions to rumors can tell you a lot about their possible validity. I believed in the absence of proof that Dead Bart was real for years and years. Matt Groening had always had a more morbid side to him, just beneath the gregarious exterior. Simpsons staff outright denied Dead Bart's existence at fan events and conventions until around 2002. With the return of Al Jean as head writer, he was the focus of questions at fan meetups in Pittsburgh Comic-Con that year. Al Jean had been with The Simpsons since the start, and openly, although politically, fielded any controversial questions. He was asked about being sued by Rio de Janeiro, about the conflicts with George H. and Barbara Bush, voice acting disputes, the list goes on and on. He answered all without a thought, including a question about Dead Bart. He confirmed its existence and explained what I've been explaining thus far. Since then, when staff that worked on the show at the time are asked about Dead Bart, they treat it like it's a silly and inappropriate question, and it generally receives no answer, not even from Gene. So end of story, right? No news about this matter surfaced for an extended period. The subject all but died until 2013. That's when I actually got to see dead Bart, with my own 2 eyes. My friend pocketed a VHS tape while working at Fox. My friend's name is Joe Muto. A few years back, he was fired and sued by Fox News for leaking inside information. He was a liberal hero for a while. His prize for his betrayal was a copy of Dead Bart. It was being housed at the Fox News archives. It was the only episode of The Simpsons there, and as far as Joe knows, it was the only copy Fox had. There were about 20 of us, drunk in Joe's studio apartment, celebrating his victory over Fox News and ready to watch this special episode of The Simpsons for the first time. I didn't actually care much about the politics of the situation. I was just there as a friend, and a diehard Simpsons fan. The episode started off like any other episode with the normal establishing music, but had very poor quality animation. If you've ever seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar, but less stable. Homer was angry. He pounded his fist on the kitchen table after reading Bart's report card. The thud and clattering of plates made myself and a few others jut back in our seats, startled. I turned to this attractive girl next to me and said, "Jesus," just to save face a little bit. Homer continued to yell and berate Bart. Not choke him, as is standard, just yell at him, with like uncompressed audio, blowing out the microphone. Bart didn't crack a joke or try to get out of the situation, he just took it, tilting his chin down and looking up with an expression of real fear, shaking even. The focus of the shot was on the guys in the house, while Marge looked out the window beyond the sink. Then it cut to a shot of Marge's face from outside the window. She was looking down into the outside, like she was in a trance, blanking out and not taking in any information around her. She slowly lifted her gaze to the viewer. Then it cut back to a shot inside the kitchen. Homer flipped a plate of bacon and eggs onto the ground in his anger. Ned Flanders could be seen outside the window, looking at Marge with a blank expression, the kind you see on a person who's really into a TV show or movie. He walked away when Homer flipped the plate. He seemed so nonplussed. Then the audio from Homer screaming started over from the beginning, again completely unmixed, but this time the shot was of Lisa in her room, sitting on her bed with a luggage bag fully packed. She was looking at her saxophone, resting at the foot of her bed, and occasionally, she glances out the window, but only for brief moments. This shot lasts the duration of Homer's angry tirade. Cut to a shot of Homer leaving the kitchen. Bart just remained in place, as though nothing changed. Bart was a statue until he jumped at the sound of the door slamming and the car's ignition. Marge, without looking back at Bart, walked out the back door, gently shutting it on the way out. The shot focused on Bart, then cut to a yellow on black text card saying 1 hour later. Bart finally moved from his position and got on the phone. He called Moe's Tavern. The screen split to show Bart and the bar. Bart, while holding his nose, asked for
Homer Simpson.
Moe puts a very drunk Homer on the phone. Bart says Homer has been randomly selected for a trip to Rio de Janeiro. Homer cheerfully goes, "Woohoo." Inexplicably, the next shot shows the Simpsons boarding a plane. Bart was fooling around, as you'd expect. However, Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. The shot traveled down with Bart as he screamed for his life the whole time. Nancy Cartwright began to fall out of character, and Bart's yelling seemed to transition from his voice to his voice actress's. The shot cuts out before you can make out the ground. It cuts to Bart, just dead in an empty cornfield, then fade out on Act 1. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table, crying. The crying went on and on. It got more pained The animation started to decay more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurring. They looked like deformed shadows with random bright colors thrown on them. Cut to a shot of the window in the front of the house. People walked by and looked worried at the house. Random people, not your typical background characters. Act 3 opens with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets throughout the entire episode. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was just lying there in front of his tombstone, looking just as it did at the end of Act 1, but Bart was in his navy blue church clothes. The family started crying again. Eventually they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face as he furrowed his brow in sadness. Homer's mouth moves, but nothing is audible. You can't tell what Homer is saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the name of every Simpsons guest star on them, many that no one had heard of in 1989. Most that hadn't been on the show yet, some still haven't. All of them had death dates on them. For the guests who have died since then, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. However, most of the dates were listed as October 25th, 2022. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpsons family on their couch, like in the intro, but absolutely forlorn, with a gap where Bart would normally sit at. The tape ran black. Joe got up and ejected the tape from the VHS player before smashing it with an unopened wine bottle, ruining both the wine and the tape. We didn't talk about what we just watched. We all just sort of shuffled out of the apartment. I don't hang out with that circle of friends anymore, so I haven't talked about what I saw. But thinking back, that date must have been a joke by Matt Groening. As I said, he can be morbid on occasion, but still, I just get a little bit more nervous with each day that passes.
Dead Bart Redux was written by Dead Palette, narration by Dead Palette, editing, mastering, and original music by Abysme. Comprehensive links below. YouTube.com/Creepypasta is a collaborative channel. Please subscribe if you want to follow our content. If you want to support the channel, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing this video with like-minded members of the community.